What's up, everyone? I'm Jerry.
I'm Justin.
And you have been invited to the anime group chat. Before we get into this week's Chainsaw Man Chapter 110, just wanted to highlight that by the time this video comes out, we should have a couple of other videos from prior Chainsaw Man chapters that you can access right up here. Feel free to take a look at those and laugh at how wrong Justin and I both were with our predictions of where the story would go.
Wrong.
So incredibly wrong. But there's a ton to unpack in Chapter 110 this week. To start off, Denji's hormones get in the way of him actually recognizing who Asa and Yoru are. Yoshida comes back in time to foil Denji's, I would say, nearly flawless plan to reveal himself as Chainsaw Man and get all of the honeys. And then we're here with a little bit of disturbing deja vu as Asa has a dream where she's walking through a weird back alley. There's a knock on the door that's happening in real life. She goes to answer it and there's an unexpected guest. So, I mean, a few different things going on. Justin, what did you think of the beginning of the chapter? Like, are we really just seeing typical thirsty Denji behavior, or is there something else going on with why he can't recognize Asa/Yoru at this point?
I want to think that there is maybe something deeper going on just because of the aforementioned relationship and conflict that has occurred between the Chainsaw Man and the Four Horsemen in the past. However, coming out of that previous chapter where the Justice Devil literally, or Yuko rather, can't read Denji's mind because he's just thinking about how to reveal himself. It's just, I honestly think that Denji is the same idiot that we've known him to be. I honestly do think that he really didn't recognize her because he's just so caught up in being his stupid Denji self.
I totally agree with you, bro, because if you even look at the paneling, she's like, hey, Chainsaw Man, do you remember me? And then it just shows him looking first at her chest, then at her waist. And I'm like, this dude just doesn't even see her. So I'm definitely leaning more toward that. I just thought it was hilarious, how Yoru was so pressed about Chainsaw Man. She's trying to get her revenge, put herself as the main villain. And then she just hits her with that light Thanos treatment.
I don't even know who you are.
So, I mean, I agree, though. I'm leaning toward Denji just having more of a one-track mind.
I was going to add there, too, as far as, this intro portion. One reason that I'm mad, and I know we haven't gotten into it, that he didn't necessarily stick around for a larger interaction with Yoru is because she develops the Yuko Leg Sword, and I was honestly really interested to see how powerful it was. It was kind of a very interesting moment in the chapter for Yoru to take the reins immediately and do exactly what she told Asa she would do, which is make a weapon out of Yuko. It definitely looked a little bit sleek. It didn't necessarily look like this big devastating weapon of any sort, but I wondered, okay, are we really about to see the strength of the War Devil at play now that the exact scenario that, Yoru had hyped up is happening and she's about to attack Denji with it? Unfortunately, he didn't stick around too much longer, but
yeah, that's a great point. I was thinking about that too as I was reading, because the sword doesn't look the strongest, right? When Asa creates this, super strong uniform sword, it actually looked pretty impressive. We just kind of thought that it wasn't going to be anything because we've seen Yoru's weapons and they weren't that great. But this one does look a bit slimmer, and I just almost wonder if there is going to be more emphasis on this dynamic of Asa's weapons being different or maybe a little stronger than Yoru's weapons. I think Asa just in general is probably more in touch with those emotions, right? She understood how important her uniform was to her, and that's what made it really strong. And I think she is the one who has a real connection with Yuko here, not Yoru. And so I actually, I was curious how strong it would be, but my expectation was that it would probably be weaker than if, Asa were to create that weapon. But, of course, my man Yoshida shows up just in time to kind of foil seeing the strength of that. To move on to Yoshida, I just love seeing him in these chapters. He clearly is just that dude, right? He's him. Yoshida is him.
He's him.
So,
he's him.
And so, I was happy he showed up, but I think he also brought a little bit of light power scaling to the chapter as well, which I was a fan of. Yoshida in this chapter pulls up, swipes Denji away so fast, it happens in front of Yoru and she literally doesn't even see it. She legit just thought he disappeared. So I just need Fujimoto to stop playing these games with my emotions and just show us what this man can do. Because clearly Yoshida is top tier. We haven't even seen him get serious once. Another evolution that we saw in this chapter is really like this change in the characterization of Yuko. Because originally, like when she showed up, she seemed like this really friendly, likable person that would have a lot of friends. Like that's Asa's initial view of her. Then we learn after the bat, like cockroach devil incident, and she's kind of laid up with her leg, that she doesn't have as many friends as we maybe thought. Maybe she doesn't have any friends, which is a little weird. And now in this chapter, through this weird like third-party conversation, we're getting this knowledge that actually she's kind of actively disliked by her classmates and has been bullied since middle school, right? And they sort of leave it off with this comment around people with weak minds are easily tricked by devils. And on the one hand, I think this does really round out this school shooter allegory that Fujimoto has been pushing for the last few chapters, with Yuko being bullied, and then she kind of like lashes out and she tells her friend not to come to school tomorrow, like, which is like one of the wildest things I have seen in manga recently.
Yeah.
that whole like that panel gave me chills. I was like, dude, he can't get away with this. Like, this is ridiculous.
Does he? He can't.
But like, on the other hand, though, I just wonder if Fujimoto's kind of trying to say something else here as well. Because I think just like, for one, the format of that conversation is really interesting, right? Like, we've seen third-party conversations like this happen a lot more in part 2, but they started off in part 1 when, you know, the chainsaw man came into like the public eye and people were being interviewed around like, is he a good guy? Is he a bad guy? And we've seen more of that in part 2. Those types of conversations have always been focused around Denji. So I think it's really interesting that we're seeing one of those, but Yuko's in that spotlight. And it's definitely kind of playing into this like this whole theme of like public perception and perspectives. But I also like, it just kind of makes me wonder about the idea of like what weak-minded means in this story, right? Like Aki initially disliked Denji because he thought his dream and his motivation was too weak, it was too shallow. But Denji ends up outliving like 90% of the people in part 1, right?
Right.
If you look at Yuko right now, sure, she's seen as a weak person. She was taken over by a devil. She did get clapped up twice in very quick succession by Asa and Denji. But if you look at the scoreboard right now, she's walking around alive and, you know, kicking or flopping, whatever she does with her tentacles. Meanwhile,
right, albeit a bit weird.
Yeah, meanwhile, like 4 classmates are dead. 2 devil hunters at least are dead. And, you know, these are like the stronger minded people, or the people that fit in, right? So it's just, I'm not sure exactly how this ties into the narrative, but I just think that those parallels are really interesting, and I definitely wonder where Fujimoto is going to like take this and tie it together.
Yeah, I think it probably lends itself to whatever this greater commentary on justice Fujimoto is trying to have. I think that the additional context that we got on Yuko was kind of pivotal because, right, we initially thought that, you know, she seemed like a likable person. Then we find out that she had no friends. And now we know that she was actually bullied all the way up until this point. And I like the point that you made about this kind of being a school shooter allegory as we're looking at the Justice Devil, as we're looking at the topics of bullying, and how those individuals who feel wronged by society lash out and enact their own justice when others can't for them, or when others aren't aware of the struggles that they're going through. And to the point where Yuko is, you know, driven to do it on Asa's behalf and cause this entire mess. So I think that the additional context that we got on Yuko lends itself, and not only the additional context that we got on Yuko, but then the following conversation around her being weak and weak people easily being tricked by devils. I think that this perception that Fujimoto is showing us that Yuko is receiving from kind of the general public about her struggles and what led her to enact, you know, all of this violence, and the perspective, you know, kind of juxtaposed with the perspective that we've gotten from her this entire time about how we went from saving Asa to ending bullying altogether if she could just destroy all schools. I think that the entire thing is hopefully a really masterful commentary on the way that we perceive justice and the way that we, you know, choose to enact it, and how it kind of falls in the eye of the beholder, like we've seen with the previous chapters.
I mean, and speaking of justice, I feel like I'm going to need some justice for the emotional abuse that I took in the last half of this chapter. Because, like, I don't care that part 1 came out 2 years ago. It is still too soon to start showing
Way
people
too
hallways, to show doors, have people almost open doors. Like I'm like that's not okay.
Come on,
I'm not okay
it's
with
not
it.
okay. It's not
it's
okay.
too soon, bro. Clearly, this is a part of what Fujimoto has shown that he really likes to do in part 2, just like these really direct callbacks to part 1. And I think the takeaway for me, or really like the big question that came out of it, is like, what is Yuko? Like, what is going on with her?
My honest take was actually that there might be a hybrid situation going on. Looking back at the previous chapter where she said that she received a heart that shines gold, who else received a heart that was tied to a devil that turned into a hybrid in the series that's notable, you know?
Yeah.
So for her to show up with remnants of what looked like her previous, exhibition of the Justice Devil's power, but still be able to tell Asa, it's me, but I've turned into a devil. Part of me thought, okay, are we seeing another hybrid? And is that why she received a heart and no contract? Because it's kind of what we experienced with Denji. I need answers, and more to the point, I need answers on why these callbacks are so specific. Not even because part 1 was so recent, but just because the callbacks are so blatant.
They're like on the nose, bro.
On the nose.
Yeah, it's an interesting place because I think at this point, we're how many chapters in now? Like we're effectively 13 chapters into part 2. If you think about like 13 chapters into part 1, we had like no idea where the story was going at all. And so I think we have all this context from part 1, sure, but this really could go in so many different directions. So for him to like do these very explicit callbacks, I almost feel like it's just gonna be the Tatsuki Fujimoto fake out, where it's like, yeah, there are all these callbacks, and this story looks like it's going in one direction, but the reality is it's going to turn on its head in the second half and be completely different, and he's just doing it now just to like fake us out and kind of poke fun at us. I don't know, with an author that really has a brand of being so unexpected and just coming completely off the cuff in some instances, it's dangerous to try to predict where anything goes. It's like brain damage to even like do the thought experiment, but we'll see what happens. I'll just have faith in Fujimoto, and like I know this will go somewhere really interesting, but I think it's definitely going to be one that will be like a really great reread, because it's like it's kind of like slow as it's going right now, but on a reread it's gonna, I think like a lot of things will start to connect, and he does like all these really long winding themes that sort of like flow through every part of the story. So I'm sure there's like something really cohesive being built here that we just like, we can only see 10% of it, so we don't know exactly what it is and how great it's gonna be. But
I want to have faith in Fujimoto, but if we find out that Asa killed her mom or something, I'm out. I'm out.
Yeah.
I'm gone. And I know it's not going to be that, but I'm just saying.
Yeah, no, that's...
the callbacks are just too specific.
That would be a lot, bro. We'll see. We'll see.
We'll see. To your point, we just have to have faith that it'll all pan out well, and the reread will deliver.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, y'all. That wraps up our discussion of Chapter 110. Very peculiar chapter. Fujimoto left us with a lot to chew on. We're interested to see where things will go. If you haven't read the chapter, go check it out. If you have, hop on in the comments, let us know what you thought. And be sure to like us, subscribe. If you enjoyed the video, we've got more content coming. Follow us on social too. We'd love to stay in touch with all of y'all. Until then, I'm Justin.
I'm Jerry.
This has been the Anime Group Chat. Catch you later.
Peace.